Well, I get to have the pleasure of speaking to you all about a topic that I'm incredibly passionate about. It's working with retailers and building out their center of sales excellence, rooted in the philosophy of solution selling. And this is so incredibly important because Janine just shared, and I think Chelsea doubled down on it, is that brands don't want to be sold to. They want to be partnered with. And brands want to be at that center of the decision-making process about what it is that they're doing in that retail environment. And we all know sellers love to talk about themselves. They do it really, really well. They can rattle off everything about that playbook to any brand, but they forget one thing. They forget the client. They forget what's important to them. So building a center of sales excellence and the importance of solution selling. So the two things that I'm going to double down on is being easy to work with and the ability to partner in the planning process with someone who understands my business. Why do you think that's so important? Is because retail media has gotten really complicated. There's a lot of players in the space, and brands are really looking at how to navigate it and how to navigate it with their partners. And I often talk to my teams that I'm training or that I'm working with, and I always refer to Simon Sinek and say, you know, people don't buy what it is that you do or how it is that you do something. It's the why. It's the belief. It's the passion. It's the understanding that you can actually help that brand achieve their goals at that particular retailer. And every conversation is very, very different. And if you as a seller are able to demonstrate that passion and that belief as to what it is that your retailer can do for them, then it makes what it is that you're going to share with them, the what and the how, so much easier. So as an industry, how well do we score on this scorecard of being partners with our brands or being a seller? It's really very sad. 83% of all sellers are considered media product sellers. How many times do you think one of your sellers or a seller or someone who's trying to sell you sets up this meeting? You're actually excited about listening, to what it is that they have to present. You get on the call, you do the nice introductions, you have a little bit of banter, and they open up the playbook and they start talking about them. And they start pitching from the second page. And that's going down a rabbit hole where I always say when you open a sale that way, it takes forever to close because you never heard what was important to the brand. When you do your research and what the 17% that marketing platform partner does, everyone should shift the focus to the brand. I always say a great meeting is when you don't even bring your playbook along with you. Leave it. You have plenty of time to show them your playbook and talk about, again, the what and the how, but you first got to understand what it is that's important to them. So I always say, are you a translator or are you an advisor? Media product seller or a marketing platform partner? The focus is on the retailer if you're a media product seller. The focus is on the brand if you're a trusted advisor. And they really don't care. Again, they really don't care the capabilities you have. They want to know if you can go into a data clean room, and they want to know some of those things. But they really want to know that you're going to help them solve the needs that they have at that retailer. So today it's really important for anyone who's leading a sales team to really educate them and train them on the importance of building relationships that matter. And what I try to share with sales teams, it's not just the first communication, it's not the second communication, it's every communication that you have with the brands that you're working with. You want to show empathy, marketing expertise, and problem solving. The empathy is the show me you know me. Show me you know my role, show me you know what I'm responsible for, show me that you know where it is that I fit in the organization, and what my job title, what the priorities are for that particular company. Marketing expertise. I call this the 10-minute Google research. I say to my team, guys, it takes 10 minutes to learn so many valuable things about a brand. I type in the brand and just say Nestle competitors, Nestle challenges, Nestle new products coming to market, Nestle quarter report, Nestle CMO, recent news. Go to the newsrooms, because you may know a lot of data as to what's happening at your retailer because you're working with the merchants and you kind of understand where it is that they sit in the category, but are they meeting the benchmarks of what their national category is actually delivering? So the marketing expertise and the homework that you do, you get the opportunity to compare what you know is happening within your retail environment to what's happening more on a national level. That's where you can start identifying the challenges. That's what brands want to do with you. They want to unlock and uncover and have these conversations that are meaningful. Because at the end of the day, we want to be able to, solve their problems, solve their needs that they have at that particular retailer. And it's not about presenting the good, better, best. That's something that makes me crazy. That means you have no idea. You're just throwing 3 things up against the wall and you're hoping they're going to buy one of them. When you dive in with your brand and you know your brand and you have those hardball questions, not the softball questions where you ask a question, they give you an answer and say, tell me more, let's unpack that. How does that have downward impact to your business? What is it that you're trying to achieve, with whatever it is that they just said? That's where you're starting to dive in. Make the recommendation that you know is going to solve the issues for the brand and that you can feel really comfortable and confident that at the end of the day, you're going to achieve the success that you're looking for. And I always say sellers, they send me emails and they're like, I think I showed empathy. I think I showed, marketing expertise, but I'm not sure I'm solving their problem. But every communication, these 3 touch points, makes that seller be viewed as that trusted advisor in that 17%. So this is an exercise I'd ask anyone who's leading a sales team in here do with each of the members. If your sellers can honestly answer yes to all 6 of these questions, I think they're on their way to becoming that trusted advisor. It's really, really hard to do. You know why? Because you have to know more about your brand than you do about your product that you're selling. So do your sellers deliver feedback that inform and influence? Are you telling them something that they didn't know? Do you strategically manage expectations? How many times have sellers come up to you and said, oh, but we got to say yes. They really need this by, this date. They're really trying to accomplish it. When you strategically manage those expectations and you set the stage for what's going to happen and what are those steps in that process that are going to allow you to get to the results that you're looking for, they're going to understand. Do you carefully manage the relationships that matter most? Who's Stephen Covey fans in here, but I always look at sales teams and they're forever in quadrant 1. They're putting out the fire extinguisher, all of the urgent and important things, but they're not being strategic and they're not spending that time really diving in and learning more about that brand and making sure that they're making the time to prioritize what's important to those brands. And then this is my favorite, play the part. I've got so many sellers that I've had the privilege of working with over the past years that get invited to those joint business planning sessions. When you have a seller where they ask them to come to corporate and sit down and start talking about what's going on next year and strategizing, you've established that credibility and you're starting to build towards that trusted advisor status. And then you'll see those people who are those difference makers on your team. They build powerful networks. And it's amazing how when you've got that shining star on your team that you'll see them get business coming out of the woodworks. Or, hey, I would love to work with this individual because I've heard great things about them. So I teased you a little bit about solution selling. And there's a myriad of training and different companies out there that will teach how best to sell and what are the steps of the sales process. But this is one that I've been using for the past 20 plus years. Could be longer than that, but go that far back. But the 5 steps to solution selling is really a sales methodology. And to me, it all starts with how the sales team approaches the brand and establishes credibility. Then you collaborate through the discovery, the strategic planning, and the delivery to achieve the desired results. So you know you're successful when you're not worried about whether or not your program is going to get results. You know they are, and you're going to continue to grow that business. There's simple steps in the beginning, and it's all rooted in research and making sure that you know everything about that brand that you possibly can. And again, there's a lot of great tools out there. There's Statista, there's ComScore, there's Media Radar. There's a lot of ways. There's the press room, there's the quarterly reports that you can pull out, that information, because when you start from the beginning and saying, hey, you know what, I have a playbook, I'm not going to present it to you. I've got like 5 or 6 questions, send an agenda. It's amazing to me how many sellers do not send an agenda prior to a meeting. If someone's going to give you 30 minutes, give them an agenda. Let them know what it is that you're going to talk about. Let them know that you connected with them on LinkedIn, that you did research on them, that you're prepared to have a conversation that's going to be a business conversation and not a product conversation. And then following that, that's where you start drawing them in and engaging them throughout the other steps of the process. Identifying the needs, that's where you go beneath the surface. Tell me more. What's the impact? What are we really trying to solve for? Test what it is that you're trying to, sometimes what they think they're trying to solve for is not necessarily what they ultimately solve for, and that's by going deeper with each one of them. Solving, confirming, and deliver, to me, the back half of your sales process is really very easy when you do the first 2 steps of your sales process effectively. So retailers, I think it's really important to focus on recruiting, hiring, building sales teams that understand the importance of solution selling and focus on the brand and not on the retailer. Really challenge your teams to do that. Partner with the merchant teams and the marketers and the brand and the agencies on a holistic approach in investment and supporting their priorities. Use the total commerce approach with a clearly defined 12-month joint business planning strategy. I always share with teams that when they go in and they look at and they start working with the brand, and you're at that point where you're problem solving and you're showing them your recommendation, always sell to the future and talk about the things that you feel that you're going to be able to accomplish and achieve as you're building that relationship. We get RFPs, we answer that RFP, we take that 50,000 or we take that 100,000, then you got to start that selling process all over again. Make that selling motion very, very fluid through the conversations and saying, hey, I'd love to talk about what comes after this. And then focus on the metrics that matter, allowing the brand to make smarter decisions. I tell my team, you're successful when you make your brand smarter, and that should be your focus. So with any retailer network that's being built, this is something that is also really important, is building that framework for that center of sales excellence. And I put the center into 5 categories. So first, the center of sales excellence. That's your repository that houses all of your sales enablement tools. But it's also your standard operating procedures. And I think this is where a lot of times things get a little bit crazy in a retailer, is that whole order to cash process doesn't have that fluid sales motion and that racy from pre-sales to post-sales, and everybody knows what it is that they need to do in each steps of those process. That's a really huge foundation. Solution selling we talked about, and yes, I like to make sure that they understand the principles and they practice the principles of solution selling, but there's also a lot of other information. If you're going to be in retail media today, you need to have a master's in retail. You need to understand the agency architecture, and you need to have ad tech training. Think about what's important so that you can make sure that you're training your team and your onboarding of your team encompasses all of these different elements. Marketing and communications, a lot of times retailers think having a great playbook is most important, or your one-sheeters, because again, you're putting the focus on you. It goes far beyond that. Having that industry conference strategy, the custom events, paid media, social content marketing, all of these things are really important to advance your retail media network. and this is my favorite, as you can tell, sales organization design. I'm really big on making sure you got the right people on the right seats on the bus. And there's a lot of ways to make sure that you do that. And that comes and happens through job descriptions. Job description should be something that you take a really long time perfecting and making sure that you're attracting the right caliber of individual. There's a lot of competencies that are important that are also very different from a salesperson to an account management person to a media buyer. Make sure you understand what those competencies are. Strengths finder, understand what comes naturally to an individual and what are the areas that you need to nurture with those individuals. Compensation playbook, a big one, and it's a really rough spot for a lot of retailers, is figuring out how to create that incentivizing but also accountable compensation plan that's going to be a win-win both for the retailer as well as them. Done a lot of work on that. And seller metrics. How is it that you're communicating back to your seller, whether or not they're doing the role to the expectations that you've set? And then client and sales management, joint business planning, quarterly business reviews, bottoms-up planning, forecasting. All of these things are techniques and methods that are really, really important when you're building out that sales organization so that you can have that ability for your brands to say you're easy to work with, as well as you're somebody that really cares about me and my business. Any questions?
On the survey you showed earlier in the presentation, the number one thing was self-service. Then everything after that was the exact opposite of self-service. So I'd love your perspective on balancing those two things.
Yeah, I think it depends on who has hands on keyboards. I think the brands themselves that are working with the retailers on the shopper level and at the trade level, they're really looking for that guidance, you know, and I think it's two different individuals that are going to be buying on the retailer.